When Carlos Mendez became Portland's most beloved food truck chef, customers lined up for his authentic Mexican cuisine. But when his immigration fears and extortion demands spiraled into murder, he began using poisoned ingredients and contaminated spices to kill customers who threatened to expose his illegal activities, turning gourmet meals into deadly traps. Before we get to this wonderful story, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Now, let's get back to the story. The morning fog lifted from Portland's bustling food truck pods as Carlos Mendez fired up the propane burners in his converted Airstream trailer, preparing for what would become the most dangerous service of his 6-year career, operating Abuela's Kitchen, the city's most popular authentic Mexican food truck. At 44 years old, Carlos had built a devoted following among Portland's food-obsessed residents, serving traditional recipes passed down through generations of his family while incorporating locally sourced ingredients that appealed to the city's environmentally conscious diners and culinary adventurers seeking genuine ethnic flavors. Carlos's distinctive silver food truck occupied a prime location in the Pioneer Courthouse Square food pod, featuring a custom-built kitchen equipped with commercial-grade equipment, a wood-fired comal for making fresh tortillas, and a complex spice grinding system that allowed him to create authentic mole sauces and seasoning blends that had made his truck legendary among Portland's competitive street food scene. His regular customers included tech workers from nearby offices, prominent food bloggers who praised his culinary authenticity, and wealthy food enthusiasts who considered his tacos and tamales to be among the finest Mexican cuisine available anywhere in the Pacific Northwest. The interior of Carlos's food truck reflected his dedication to culinary excellence and cultural authenticity, featuring family photographs from his childhood in Oaxaca, traditional Mexican cooking implements that had belonged to his grandmother, and handwritten recipe cards in Spanish that contained the closely guarded family secrets that made his food so exceptional. His walls displayed positive reviews from food critics, certificates from health inspectors, and thank you notes from customers whose lives had been brightened by his warm personality and extraordinary culinary skills. But beneath Carlos's reputation for authentic cuisine lay a dangerous combination of illegal immigration status, extortion by criminal organizations, and growing desperation that had driven him to systematically poison customers who threatened to expose his undocumented status or his connections to drug trafficking networks. "Good morning, Carlos," said Jennifer Walsh, his regular 11 o'clock customer and a 43-year-old immigration attorney whose office was located 3 blocks from the food pod and who had been eating at his truck twice weekly for over 2 years. Jennifer had become fascinated by Carlos's authentic cooking techniques and had begun asking detailed questions about his family background and immigration story, expressing interest in helping him navigate the complex legal process of obtaining permanent residency status through his successful business operations. "Good morning, Jennifer," Carlos replied, with the warm, enthusiastic demeanor that had made him beloved among Portland's diverse food truck community and had earned him recognition as one of the city's most authentic and talented street food chefs. "I have prepared something very special for you today. My grandmother's secret recipe for mole negro that requires over 30 different ingredients and takes 3 days to prepare properly. This is the same recipe that my family has been guarding for over 100 years. Jennifer had become Carlos's most dangerous customer, not because of her demanding palate or her legal expertise, but because of her growing suspicions about inconsistencies in his immigration story and her professional obligation to report suspected violations of immigration law that could result in his deportation and the exposure of his criminal activities. As an immigration attorney, Jennifer had begun noticing discrepancies in Carlos's personal history that suggested he might be using false documentation or might be involved in illegal activities beyond simple undocumented residence. What Jennifer didn't know was that Carlos had been systematically poisoning customers who posed threats to his illegal status while operating as a money laundering front for a Mexican drug cartel that used his food truck to process cash payments and distribute narcotics throughout Portland's restaurant industry. Carlos's transformation from legitimate chef to calculating killer had begun 3 years earlier when his attempts to obtain legal immigration status had been complicated by his arrest record in Mexico, where he had been convicted of assault charges related to his involvement with organized crime groups before fleeing to the United States. His undocumented status had made him vulnerable to exploitation by a Portland-based money laundering operation that used ethnic restaurants and food trucks to process drug proceeds while providing cover for narcotics distribution networks. Faced with threats of deportation and potential violence from cartel associates who demanded his continued cooperation in their criminal activities, Carlos had agreed to allow his food truck to be used as a front for drug money processing and distribution. However, his involvement had escalated when several customers had begun asking suspicious questions about his business operations and had threatened to report their concerns to immigration authorities or law enforcement agencies. His first victim had been Dr. Patricia Williams, a public health inspector who had discovered evidence of money laundering during a routine inspection of his financial records and had threatened to report her findings to federal authorities. Carlos had murdered her using ricin extracted from castor beans that he had processed into powder and mixed into her favorite pozole soup, causing fatal organ failure that had been attributed to food poisoning from contaminated ingredients. The success of his first murder had convinced Carlos that killing suspicious customers was both necessary for protecting his immigration status and profitable for his cartel associates, who paid him substantial bonuses for eliminating potential witnesses to their money laundering operations. Over the following 2 years, Carlos had murdered 8 additional customers using increasingly sophisticated botanical poisons that he extracted from plants grown in his secret garden behind the abandoned warehouse where he prepared his food truck ingredients. His victims had been carefully selected based on their potential threat to his illegal activities, their lack of close family connections who might investigate suspicious deaths, and their involvement in situations where their deaths could be attributed to food-borne illnesses or natural medical emergencies. His victims had included Robert Chen, a health department investigator who had been tracking unusual patterns of food poisoning cases connected to specific food trucks; Marcus Foster, a food blogger who had been researching the authenticity of ethnic restaurants and had begun asking detailed questions about Carlos's background and family recipes; and David Park, a financial investigator who had been examining cash flow patterns at various Portland businesses as part of a money laundering investigation. "Carlos, I need to discuss some serious concerns I have about your business operations and documentation," said Detective Lisa Martinez of the Portland Police Bureau's Organized Crime Division as she approached Carlos's food truck during the busy lunch rush while displaying her credentials and a warrant to inspect his business records. Detective Martinez specialized in investigating money laundering operations that used legitimate businesses as fronts for criminal activities and had developed expertise in tracking cash flow patterns that indicated illegal financial activities. Detective Martinez's investigation represented an existential threat to Carlos's criminal operation, as her law enforcement expertise and access to financial databases could expose both his illegal immigration status and his connections to drug trafficking organizations. "Of course, Detective Martinez," Carlos replied, though he felt the familiar surge of terror and desperation that accompanied any official scrutiny of his business operations by law enforcement officers who possessed the authority to expose his undocumented status and his criminal activities. "I am always happy to cooperate with any investigation, though I must continue serving my customers during this busy lunch period to maintain my business operations." Detective Martinez consulted detailed financial reports and surveillance documentation that showed unusual patterns of cash transactions and customer interactions that suggested Carlos's food truck was being used for purposes beyond simple food service operations. "Carlos, we've been monitoring your business operations as part of a broader investigation into money laundering activities in Portland's food service industry," Detective Martinez said with the professional directness that had made her successful in solving complex organized crime cases. "Our surveillance has documented cash transactions that far exceed what would be normal for a food truck operation, along with customer interactions that appear to involve exchanges of materials other than food." Additionally, we've identified several suspicious deaths among your regular customers that warrant further investigation. The detective's confirmation that law enforcement had been conducting surveillance of his operations and had connected his food truck to both money laundering and suspicious customer deaths confirmed Carlos's worst fears that his criminal activities were about to be exposed and would result in his arrest, deportation, and potential retaliation from cartel associates who demanded absolute secrecy about their operations. Carlos's response was swift and desperate as he realized that eliminating Detective Martinez was his only option for protecting both his freedom and his life from the multiple threats that surrounded his criminal enterprise. Detective Martinez, I think there may be some misunderstanding about normal cash operations in the food service industry, Carlos said, while discreetly reaching for a prepared container of aerosolized adhering toxin that he kept hidden among his spice containers for use against immediate threats to his security. Perhaps we could discuss your concerns in my food preparation area, where I can show you my detailed record-keeping systems and explain the cash flow patterns that might appear unusual to someone unfamiliar with ethnic food business operations. Detective Martinez agreed to examine Carlos's records in the food truck's preparation area, not realizing that the chef was leading her into a confined space where he had committed previous murders and where he planned to expose her to the aerosolized adhering toxin that would cause fatal respiratory failure while appearing to be an allergic reaction to exotic spices. Carlos's plan involved activating the hidden aerosol dispenser while Detective Martinez was examining his financial records, causing immediate pulmonary edema and respiratory collapse that would be attributed to a severe allergic reaction rather than deliberate poisoning by a cartel-connected killer. But Carlos's carefully planned murder of the detective was about to be prevented by the unexpected arrival of federal agents who had been investigating the money laundering network and had coordinated with local law enforcement to apprehend multiple suspects simultaneously. Special Agent Michael Torres of the DEA's Organized Crime Division had been leading a comprehensive federal investigation into Mexican cartel money laundering operations that used Portland's diverse restaurant industry to process drug proceeds and distribute narcotics throughout the Pacific Northwest. Agent Torres specialized in investigating cartel financial networks and had developed expertise in tracking criminal organizations that exploited legitimate businesses to conceal their illegal activities. The federal investigation had been coordinated with immigration and customs enforcement agents who had been tracking undocumented individuals who were being exploited by criminal organizations for money laundering and drug distribution activities. The investigation had identified Carlos's food truck as a central component of a larger criminal network that had been operating throughout Portland's food service industry for several years. Agent Torres had been conducting surveillance of the entire criminal network and had coordinated with Detective Martinez to ensure that multiple suspects would be arrested simultaneously to prevent them from warning associates or destroying evidence of their criminal activities. Carlos Mendez, I'm Special Agent Torres with the DEA, he announced as he entered the food truck where Carlos was preparing to murder Detective Martinez. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit money laundering, distribution of controlled substances, and multiple counts of murder committed in furtherance of criminal enterprise activities. Carlos's reaction to the federal agent's intervention was a combination of absolute panic and violent desperation as he realized that law enforcement agencies at multiple levels had been investigating his criminal activities and had coordinated their efforts to prevent his planned murder of Detective Martinez while building comprehensive cases against the entire cartel network. You don't understand the situation I was forced into, Carlos screamed while abandoning his plan to poison Detective Martinez and instead attempting to attack both law enforcement officers with kitchen knives and containers of concentrated plant toxins that he kept readily available for cooking and killing. They threatened to kill my family in Mexico if I didn't cooperate with their money operations. I was trying to build a legitimate business and provide for my children, but they forced me to become part of their criminal organization. Detective Martinez and Agent Torres looked absolutely shocked as they realized the sophistication of the criminal network and the extent to which Carlos had been using his culinary expertise to commit systematic murder while laundering drug money through his popular food truck operation. The comprehensive investigation that followed Carlos's arrest revealed the full scope of the criminal enterprise and the sophisticated methods that had been developed to use Portland's food truck industry for money laundering and murder. Forensic analysis of Carlos's food truck and preparation facilities revealed extensive evidence of his toxic plant cultivation and processing operations, including stockpiles of botanical poisons, sophisticated extraction equipment, and detailed research notes documenting the effects of various plant toxins on human physiology. His financial records showed systematic coordination between customer murders and money laundering activities designed to eliminate witnesses while processing substantial amounts of drug proceeds. The investigation also uncovered the broader criminal network that had been exploiting Portland's ethnic restaurant industry, including connections to multiple Mexican cartel organizations and local criminal groups that had been using food service businesses as fronts for drug distribution and money laundering operations throughout the Pacific Northwest. Most disturbing was the discovery of the systematic exploitation of undocumented immigrants who had been forced to participate in criminal activities under threat of deportation or violence against their families, revealing how organized crime groups had been using immigration fears to create networks of reluctant criminal participants throughout legitimate business communities. Carlos Mendez was ultimately convicted of 9 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit money laundering, distribution of controlled substances, and numerous other charges related to his participation in organized criminal enterprise activities. The conviction exposed the extensive infiltration of Portland's food service industry by organized crime groups and prompted immediate reforms in business licensing, immigration enforcement coordination, and protection programs for vulnerable immigrants who might be exploited by criminal organizations. Several other food trucks and restaurants were investigated for similar criminal activities, resulting in the discovery of a comprehensive network of businesses that had been used for money laundering and drug distribution, while exploiting the labor of undocumented workers who had been coerced into criminal participation. Detective Martinez and Agent Torres received recognition for their collaborative investigation and became specialists in investigating organized crime infiltration of legitimate businesses. Their investigation techniques became standard procedures for federal and local agencies responsible for identifying criminal enterprises that exploited immigrant communities and small business operations. Jennifer Walsh and other surviving customers required extensive medical monitoring and psychological counseling to overcome the trauma of learning that their trusted food truck chef had been systematically poisoning customers while operating a criminal enterprise. The food service industry implemented comprehensive new safety protocols designed to protect customers from exploitation by vendors with criminal connections. The case prompted comprehensive changes in food service regulation, including enhanced background checking for food truck operators, mandatory reporting of suspicious financial activities, improved coordination between immigration authorities and business licensing agencies, and new protection programs for immigrants who reported criminal exploitation. Carlos's conviction also led to increased awareness among food truck customers about the importance of supporting legitimate businesses while recognizing signs of potential criminal activity in food service operations that might be exploiting vulnerable workers or customers. The food truck and broader restaurant industries implemented revolutionary safety measures, including enhanced vendor screening procedures, comprehensive employee protection programs, mandatory reporting of suspicious business activities, and improved training for recognizing signs of organized crime infiltration in food service businesses. 6 years after Carlos's conviction and life imprisonment, Portland's food service industry continued to implement safeguards designed to protect both workers and customers from criminal organizations that might exploit legitimate businesses for money laundering and violence. The food truck owner, who had promised to share authentic family recipes and cultural traditions, had instead used his culinary expertise and immigrant status to commit systematic murder and money laundering while being exploited by criminal organizations that preyed upon vulnerable undocumented workers. However, His crimes had been thoroughly exposed, and his victims had found justice through the dedication of investigators who refused to accept food poisoning deaths as mere accidents in the restaurant industry. Carlos Mendez's toxic recipes had been permanently removed from Portland's food scene, and their creator sentenced to life imprisonment, where he would serve multiple life sentences without possibility of parole, proving that even criminals who were themselves victims of exploitation would be held accountable for their choices to harm innocent people rather than seek legal assistance to escape criminal coercion. The food truck owner's toxic recipes had become his final menu of justice, serving as a permanent reminder that criminals cannot justify murder through claims of coercion or exploitation, and that those who choose to poison innocent customers will face the full consequences of their betrayal of culinary trust and community safety, regardless of their own victimization by organized crime. Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.